I was disappointed in this book. I'm sorry, I'm not going to beat around the bush. And I really wanted this video to be positive too. Anyway, hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Corinne, and today we are talking about Beneath by Ariel Sullivan. Last week on my channel, I talked about Conform, and I was a little bit critical of it, but I mostly talked about how I really enjoyed it and how it was a really fun time. Conform and Beneath are linked because this is book one in a trilogy, and Beneath is book one in a prequel trilogy. And this is going to be a trilogy of trilogies. We don't know when the third trilogy is set yet, and we don't have an announcement for book two of either of these trilogies yet. But probably something will come out at the end of this year, maybe early next year, because these two books came out like 5 months apart. She is working at a rapid pace. Conform was set in this futuristic society after like some sort of disaster has taken place, and it's quite high tech. And there's this kind of breeding program. So our main character in Conform gets put in an arranged marriage for breeding purposes with one of the elites in the clouds, which are kind of these tall buildings in the city. And she also falls for like this rebel leader that lives underground in the kind of major defects area of the city, because they're kind of divided into the elites, the minor defects, and the major defects. Beneath is set about 200 years beforehand, maybe even longer, and it's set 6 years after a nuclear apocalypse has happened on Earth. I think in America, although it's quite vague about where it takes place, it's given American vibes though. So our main character in Beneath, Sasha, she has lost all of her family basically in this nuclear apocalypse. She's quite a badass. She learned how to shoot and stuff like that, and how to do first aid and things from her father, who was in the military. He dies in the war, and she's tasked with looking after her younger siblings. But when we pick up with her in this book, they have long passed away, and you find out kind of what happens over the course of this book in some like flashbacks. And Sasha is really jaded. She kind of opens the book by saying she hates people. She's pretty much a traumatized person who has a lot of survivor's guilt, and as such, she has a really negative self talk kind of voice, which I think psychologically is quite true for someone feeling survivor's guilt and who's like living in an underground silo after she's lost everything in a nuclear apocalypse. Like, it makes sense that she's going to have bad mental health, okay? And that she's going to be grieving. And pretty much everyone in the society has been through similar stuff, of course. So everyone's got some traumas to a degree, everyone's grieving to a degree. And Sasha spent a lot of time working as a medic, kind of in the hospital. She has this ability of not really getting sick very easily. So she ends up working with like lots of very sick people and watching them die. And she has a lot of trauma from this as well. Where we pick up with her at the start of this book, she's kind of become disillusioned with that whole system and is now just like mining. Like, she's just working on expanding the tunnels and using her pickaxe every day. And emotionally, that's kind of all she can cope with. She's kind of got this attitude of just like working away the sadness and try not to think about it too much, and having lost all meaning. She also purposefully like pushes people away. She doesn't make friends. She has kind of romantic interactions, sexual interactions, but they don't get romantic. Like, she keeps everyone casual and at an arm's length. And she kind of purposely goes after guys she doesn't really organically like, who aren't really good people. And the ones that are good people, she pushes away because she doesn't feel like she deserves love. And she feels like she's a bad person or an evil person because she's had to do some things that are a bit unsavory in order to survive, as is most of the people in this society, to be honest. But she's just really struggling with that. And a lot of this book, it's just set in this underground society. It's in this tunnel systems, very much like a fallout shelter, a silo. And a lot of the book is about her mental journey and her forming new connections again. However, it's not like a literary fiction book, right? It's very much a genre fiction, new adult, dystopian romance. So I think you go into it expecting it to be a little bit more thrilling, and you end up with quite a lot of this repetitive talk about her trauma and her attitude without it ever like really going deep into the mental health or survivor's guilt as a theme. I felt like it dealt with it in kind of a surface level way, and in a way that just kind of became quite frustrating to read. Like, her inner voice, her narrative, it wasn't like the best place to be in. And like, I felt empathy for her. I felt sympathy, but I wasn't overly rooting for her. Like, she didn't have loads of redeeming qualities that made me like want to read on just to see her get through. I actually got a little bit tired of her voice, even though I think trauma and themes of trauma and survivor's guilt are all really interesting, and they're all things that I am genuinely very interested in. I like those kind of stories. I cover similar themes in my own book that I'm writing, but for some reason, this just didn't resonate and it didn't quite hit for me, which was a shame. Now, the main crux of the plot is she's mining, doing this expansion thing. She was working as a medic and she was helping this group of soldiers, including this one handsome one. In the society, they have this thing called the health score, which is where if you get sick and your health score drops, you're pretty much discarded. This is kind of based on real scores that they use in like crisis. So, say there's a big natural disaster, a tsunami or something like that, an earthquake, and there's loads of casualties. Healthcare and people working in first response will prioritize like maximizing life and just trying to save the most amount. So, people who are like dying and clearly can't be saved will be left for people that can be quickly and easily fixed up and turned around. They will be left to die in place of helping people with more minor injuries because there's more chance of saving those lives, doing a quick bit of first aid and then moving on to the next person, rather than them spending like hours trying to save someone who has no chance, basically. That's as far as I understand what happens in these kind of emergency first responding kind of incidents. So I think this health score, it kind of had something to do with that. Like, they're in this silo, they've got limited resources, limited medicines and things. So once someone is kind of a bit too injured or sick to go on, they will lower their health score, kind of move them down in the ranks. And then they can't serve in the military, they can't do a lot of things, and they aren't prioritized for healthcare. I think that's how it works. It was a little bit poorly explained. But anyway, she's helping this unit and she's keeping all of their injuries off the books basically so that it doesn't affect their health score, because if it affects their health score, they'll be kicked out of the military and be put into like expansion, where they're just going to be like mining and pretty much not important, or they'll be like put in sanitation or something like that. So they like her because she helps them in this way. And I think that's all an interesting plot point, the idea of this health score. However, I think the logic of it fell apart a little bit. Like I said, I don't think it was explained that thoroughly. I wanted to understand it a little bit more, what the logic behind it was, because for the military especially, like, they are going to get injured. So what? You're going to kick someone out every time they get injured, even if they can continue to fight on. Because during this plot, there are people in the military, they get injured and it impacts their health score. And technically, they'll be like kicked out, even though they are actually fine and they can continue to fight or do whatever they're doing. So that to me doesn't make the most sense. Of course, like in the normal military, like in the real world, yes, there's injuries you would have that would force you to retire, or things that you might have wrong with you that will preclude you from getting into the military in the first place. Like, I've got asthma, that would probably preclude me from the military, the police, etc. That's just kind of the way life works in the military. But here, they seemed very quick to discard people that were able to go on, and the military itself was also very small. It seemed that like there was 16 or 18 units, and each unit had like 10 to 12 soldiers, maybe 15 at a push, which is only around 200, right? So that's not a very big military. I don't think you can afford to be that picky if that's only the number of soldiers you have to choose from, and you've only got so many people in this silo. So, how many fresh new recruits are you really going to get? Probably not that many. So, I think the logic of all of that fell down a bit, but I was like, okay, I'm just going to try not to think about it too much. And then let's get into the plot, because I understand I'm just ranting without explaining myself very much. So Sasha, she's in this expansion thing. She's mining, she's quit being a healthcare worker, but because she was so useful at fixing all of these guys' health scores, they recruit her kind of forcefully to be part of their squad as a medic. And the leader of the squad is Tristan, who's this really handsome, nice, attractive army guy, the kind of book boyfriend you'd want to read about. and he and Sasha have a little bit of chemistry, but she keeps him at arm's length because of her trauma. So they bring her into the squad. The purpose of the squad is that they go above ground, back into the nuclear winter above ground, and try to find supplies because in the silo that they've been in for 6 years, they are quickly running low. And most of the population don't know this. So they're kind of working to prevent some kind of war uprising when the supplies run out. So they do a kind of training montage, as you see in a lot of these military style fantasy romance, dystopian romance kind of books. I think it was probably the most similar vibes to Silver Elite. Like, she's kind of not really trying, she's failing a lot, and the training itself isn't that exciting. They have this house exercise thing where they go into this house, and I think there's like projections or something like that, holograms, and people watch how they get on in the house, and it's just kind of a military ops exercise. But it doesn't make a lot of sense because when they go above ground, they're never going through houses, and outside the world is very barren. Like, there's not really anyone that they're fighting. They're not doing those kind of military ops. I guess maybe they're preparing for if war breaks out in the silo, but the silo's not a house, it's kind of a different environment altogether, so I don't know why it's a house. And I also think that wasn't explained in very much detail. That's the crux of a lot of this book is like the silo itself, the setting isn't explained in much detail, the outside world, the nuclear apocalypse. I get everything's destroyed, right, and everything's kind of grey, but it wasn't described in a lot of detail. There wasn't much vivid imagery. And I'm not saying it has to be purple prose or it has to be described in much depth, right? But it does need something. Like, I need to be able to paint a picture with my mind, and I just couldn't do that. The world felt very colourless and empty, but not in like an intentional way, like it's intentionally a dead world. It just felt like it was an empty set in my mind. Like, fill in the blanks yourself. Like, that's what I felt like reading this book. So yeah, they do all of this training. It's not the most interesting, but there's some quite nice like interactions with the other squad mates. You get to know all of them quite well, and it's very much a found family kind of vibe. Everyone's got an interesting dynamic with each other. Some of them are funny and quippy, some of them are quiet. If you like those found family kind of vibes, you'll probably like this because it was very much all character and vibes and not really a lot of plot or action at this point. And I stuck with it because I thought these books normally do get exciting at some point and stuff's going to happen. And we got to kind of the midpoint and I thought we were getting there. They go up to go on this mission to find supplies, and they kind of reveal that there's some obstacles in place. They think they know where the supplies might be, but there's all these kind of things that pop out of the ground and flames and things like that that make it very difficult to access. And that was quite interesting and had quite a lot of intrigue because I was like, who's trying to block them from supplies? Is it the elites from Conform? Are they like testing these people? Are they test subjects? Are they trying to find the strongest people by putting them through these tests? I don't know. Is it a whole other group of survivors that are trying to keep them away? I don't know. I had a lot of questions and I thought, obstacles, that sounds cool. It sounded quite like Mockingjay in the Hunger Games where they're going through the capital and there's lots of pods and traps. There's mutts, there's the big oily black wave that drowns everyone. There's all of these insane booby traps set up at the capital. So I was like, okay, it's giving Mockingjay. We've got the discussion of trauma as well, which Mockingjay covers. And I thought, okay, this is going to get good. It's going to get like the Hunger Games. And then it just didn't. We had like a scene with one of the traps. It was just kind of a boring trap, but it had big consequences. And I think that's the only trap we deal with because next time they go that way, and the journey to that area is like empty. There's nothing there, so there's not really any peril. The traps are all turned off next time, so you don't have to deal with the traps. And I was like, the traps would have made it fun and interesting and given us stakes. It did give us stakes for one thing that happened in the midpoint, which I won't spoil, but other than that plot point, it was very boring. It wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be, and it also wasn't as deep and meaningful as I thought it would be. Like, Mockingjay does this in such a exciting, entertaining way that is absolutely gutting. It's devastating. It's an emotional roller coaster as well as an action roller coaster. And it's a way more convincing exploration of Katniss's trauma. Like, Katniss becomes a really injured shell of a person. She becomes unrecognizable. And she shows a very like genuine side of mental illness. Like, she doesn't wash, she lets her wounds fester. She just shows a really authentic picture of trauma. And Sasha just comes across as a bit more haughty and a bit more like, oh, I hate everyone and I hate myself, boo hoo. And while I think that's an attitude that could come with trauma, that could come with survivor's guilt, I just thought Mockingjay portrayed trauma in a bit more of an authentic and deep way than this book did. So yeah, the plot left some action and excitement to be desired. When I thought it was going to get good, it died down again and became slow and dull. Kind of put me in a reading slump, to be honest. We have a romance subplot with Tristan, kind of goes how you'd expect, and then we have a bit more excitement towards the end. But by that point, it felt like too little too late. And there was some links to conform at the end, which were quite interesting, but it didn't blow me away the way I expected it to. I expected it to like completely shine a new light on Conform in some way by seeing how things were formed, but I was left just feeling like whelmed, like kind of underwhelmed. So I don't know. I didn't have as much fun as I did with Conform. I'm still really excited about future books in the series, particularly in the Conform trilogy. Will I read book two of this trilogy? Well, I kind of feel like I have to because I think they're all going to link and perhaps get more interesting. Maybe this is one I just need to kind of sit through, and there was a lot of setup, and it's going to come together as more books come out. And if whatever book comes out next ends up disappointing me, then I don't know. I might end up DNFing the series, which is such a shame to say because I actually really loved Conform despite some of its flaws. Like, I could overlook them, I could forgive them because I had so much fun. This one has its flaws, and I could have overlooked them if it got exciting and if I had fun, but I just didn't. So I'm hoping that book two of this trilogy steps it up, gets a bit more exciting. Otherwise, book three is going to be a pass. Anyway, let me know what you thought of Beneath. And don't get put off by my review because it's just my opinion. And there's quite a lot of people that did really enjoy this book. They liked the themes of exploring trauma in this way. They liked that it was slow. They liked the found family and the romance. There was more sex scenes in this book than in Conform. If you read the blurb and you think that sounds right up my street, it probably is, and you'll probably like it. So don't let me burst your bubble. It's fine. I'm not judging. I think I'm just disappointed because my expectations were like up here and it didn't meet up there. It met like here. And it put me in a reading slump. So thanks for that, Beneath. Didn't expect that from you. Literally pre ordered it halfway through Conform because I was loving Conform so much. But there we go. If you like this video, subscribe to my channel. I put out new videos every week. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!